Hey guys, as you can see, our apartment is still a bit of a construction zone and we're still not really able to move in or properly film here. And it doesn't seem like we will be able to do it this year, but fingers crossed, next year we'll finally have everything ready, everything settled in, and we will have a proper filming set behind my back as well. So just bear with me and let's talk books. Hey guys, today I want to talk with you about Throne of Glass, a young adult fantasy novel by Sarah J. Maas. Throne of Glass has been released back in 2012 and it's the first out of 7 books in Throne of Glass series. My first introduction to Sarah J. Maas was earlier this year when I picked up The Court of Thorns and Roses. I fell in love so quickly with Sarah J. Maas' writing, the magical world, and the characters author brought to life that the Court of Thorns and Roses series quickly became my guilty pleasure books. And once I finished them, it honestly took me a while to convince myself to start off Throne of Glass series. And that's only because I knew, even before I started reading this book, I knew that if these series are at least half as good as A Court of Thorns and Roses were, it is going to become my new obsession, and I just didn't have time to have an obsession. And yet I finally gave up. It finally feels like it's the right time for me to embark on this new adventure. So as per usual, we will start this video with a short synopsis, then proceed into a non-spoiler review and wrap this video up with the spoilers. If you haven't read this book yet, then do not worry, I will make sure to let you know when the spoilers begin. In this book we follow Celaena Sardothien, an 18-year-old assassin from the kingdom of Adarlan. Due to her crimes, she has been sentenced to work as a slave in a camp called Endovier. Though lucky for her, after a year of slavery in the salt mines, Celaena was brought to the crown prince of Adarlan, Dorian Haviliard, and he had an offer Celaena could not refuse. Dorian wants Celaena to participate in a game, a tournament of sorts, in which his father, the king, will choose one champion from the most dangerous and gifted criminals of his land, someone who will loyally serve his needs to eliminate his enemies, no questions asked. If Celaena manages to win the competition and become the king's champion, she will earn her freedom after just 4 short years of servitude. If she loses, she goes back to the slave camp. And while Celaena might not be thrilled about the idea of working for a tyrant, she knows that if she stays in Endovier, she will die. Okay, so I will say right away, I liked the book. I really did. Was it the best book by Sarah J. Maas that I have personally read? Well, no, but I also have to take into consideration that Throne of Glass is also the very first book that was written by her, and for many authors it does take time and practice to learn how to reach their full potential. In my eyes, however, that potential for a truly epic fantasy saga was there. And yes, I know that I have to admit that the plot of this book was a little bit over the place, and so was the pacing. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this book was not really meant to tell us a coherent story, but rather to introduce us to the world and some of the main characters. Overall, it really felt much more like a prequel to a story you already know and love, and not a first installment in a series. And maybe I would be upset about it if I would have read it back in 2012 and Throne of Glass would have been all that I had. But since I was reading it now, knowing that I have 6 other sequels in the series waiting for me on a shelf, I just couldn't bring myself to be annoyed by this. I like this book because despite it being a first book in a young adult book fantasy series, it wasn't too predictable, too sweet, or too over-the-top romantic. The book was not driven by the love story, but rather packed with action and mysteries that I hope will be uncovered as the series go by. I found this book to be easy to read, and it piqued my interest enough that I didn't want to put it down before I finished it, and as I finished it, I instantly wanted to start on the second one. Also, maybe it's just me, but I didn't fall in love with any of the characters right away. And that's probably because none of them were really trying to be likable. Celaena, our main protagonist, is self-centered, Dorian, the crown prince who gets Celaena out of the salt mines, is shallow, and Kayal, the captain of the royal guard, is very judgmental. But that's okay. They all have their own reasons to be the way they are. And the more you read and the more you get to know them, the easier it gets to look beyond these initial shortcomings. My only complaint when it comes to the characters would be the fact that the secondary characters of the book were not explored so well. Even though we follow Celaena, the story is not written from her point of view, but rather from the view of an impartial third person, which allows us to once in a while see what Dorian and Kael are up to, whom they interact with, and what is happening in their heads. However, these chapters were so short and so far between that it still didn't allow us to actually get to know either one of them. Overall, while I do agree that there is definitely some space here for growth when it comes to plot clarity, pacing, and character development, despite the story's weaknesses, I also found this book to be thoroughly enjoyable and entertaining. And on that note, we will proceed to spoiler review. So if you haven't read this book yet, but you feel like it is something you would like to do, then you should click off this video now. Alright, so now that we can talk freely, let's talk a little bit more about the main characters and the main events of this book. First thing first, I do believe that Celaena is a great protagonist. I see how she might not be someone that one could easily relate to, as she is described as exceptionally strong, exceptionally talented, and beyond beautiful, but I also don't see why we should need to relate to her. We can understand her and admire her for what she is. Powerful, bold, charismatic, and at least in my eyes, still very human. She might be this badass assassin who has gained a reputation of being the best in the kingdom at such a young age and surviving a year of slavery, but she's still not invincible. We can see her having to train on a daily basis. We see her being completely out of shape and throwing up every time she goes for a run with Kael. Celaena might also be smart, especially for a young woman who was raised without any formal education. Dorian himself points out that the conversations about books, history, or politics flow easily when they talk. Yet she is not the smartest or the most ingenious person in the room either. She resigns to cheating during the poison test, and she understands that there are things she could learn from others, being it archery from Kael or Elvi from Nehemia. Even during that final duel Celaena has with Cain, during which she gets poisoned, it's not Celaena who really wins it. It's the shared forces of Nehemia and Elena. Celaena would have never been able to survive or win if the ladies would not have worked together to remove the poison from Celaena's body and win her some time. And I very much appreciate this ending, because more than anything else, as I have mentioned before, it made Celaena feel human. It showed that she needs others to help her to push through. She can't really do it all by herself. And although, as it is typical for young adult heroine, everybody wants a piece of Celaena, for the most of the book it feels like she is still heartbreakingly lonely. I remember reading this passage in the book where Celaena has already figured out that it is Cain who is killing the champions with the help of Ridderak, and she's staying in her bed at night alone, feeling afraid that another Ridderak might show up at any moment and kill her. And by that time of the book, she has already found some common language with Kael, she has established a friendship with Nehemia, and even started somewhat of a romantic relationship with Dorian, and yet when the push comes to shove, she's still alone. She still feels like she can't count on anyone but herself, and that's just incredibly sad when you stop and think about it. In addition, we do have to keep in mind that Celaena is just a teenager. Despite her accomplishments and despite the hardships she had to endure, she is still just an 18-year-old girl. And that feels so clearly in this book. She can be rude to the people who are there to help her. She can be short-tempered and easily annoyed. She feels especially young when the story doesn't concentrate on her as an assassin, but as a girl instead. She's upset that she doesn't get to attend the ball, she is shy during her interactions with Dorian and embarrassed over their kiss. And same goes to Dorian. He's also just so very young. He doesn't have enough life experience to truly understand Celaena or their situation. He doesn't have enough courage yet to stand up to his father, or to fight for what he believes to be the right thing to do. Things like that come with age, and Dorian is still only 19. As for the romance in this book, I have to say that overall I really like the way Sarah J. Maas handled this aspect of the story. Despite this being a young adult read, we didn't got any love at first sight situations or eternal love confessions. When it comes to Celaena and Dorian, I somehow never truly believed in the romance. Yes, they were cute together, and yes, Dorian is such a lovely man, but their feelings for one another felt superficial to me. Dorian fell in love with Celaena, though I'm not even sure we can call it love. Maybe it's more accurate to say that Dorian became infatuated with Celaena because she was different. He himself once said that he cannot imagine marrying a woman who would be inferior to him in mind and spirit, and Celaena was the first woman that he met who actually was his equal. And when it comes to Celaena and her feelings, we see that her crush never really goes beyond that. Just a simple teenage crush on someone who is smart, kind, funny, and handsome. Someone who shows her attention and helps her to feel less lonely. Now, while I enjoyed Kael a little less as a character than I enjoyed Dorian, I do believe that he and Celaena have the potential to be a stronger couple than Celaena and Dorian, simply because Kael and Celaena understand each other better. They both serve the king, their both lives depends on the king's wishes, and they both are warriors in their own right. They train together, they spend time together on a daily basis, they get to know each other and to some extent even confide in each other. They just end up building a better foundation for a possible relationship. As for the plot of the book, that's a little bit more difficult to discuss, since the plot was all over the place. I guess the main plot line of Celaena being challenged to become the king's champion and then actually becoming the king's champion is the only thing that truly made sense. Besides that, things kinda just kept on happening. Some tests were shown to us, some were not. Some of the other contestants were introduced, some killed behind the scenes. Sometimes only a few hours and sometimes whole weeks passed in between the chapters. When I started reading this book, I thought we are going to get something structured. We have the champions, we have the tasks they need to fulfill, we have the goal of winning. Somewhat like the Hunger Games. We have been selected, we train, we participate, and we kick ass. Instead, we got the competition, a serial killer on the loose, the core drama of who Crown Prince should marry, the somewhat of a love triangle, the magic, the dead fae, the demons, mind control, political issues, and possible rebellions within the occupied lands. That's a lot, especially for a book that has to squeeze in the introduction to this new world and new characters, as well as all these plot points in just 400 pages. It feels like we were giving so much, and most of the things we were given were just the setups for the future books, which can either encourage you to keep on reading or make you feel like you want to throw the book to the wall out of frustration. Me, personally, I can't wait to know what happens next. But that's just my opinion. What about yours?